there are too many sort of characters to dive into, but I want to see if we can dive in briefly because two of them are just, I mean, Dan White and George W. Bush. As you know, I live in the Bay Area, so that the milk story is so iconic here. When you land at San Francisco Airport, Terminal 1 is the Harvey Milk Terminal, and there's a beautiful exhibition about his life. And that character that you played is a very complex character, and because he's a villain, but he's not. It's not so cut and dry. It's more complicated than that. And George W. Bush, same thing. It's a complicated story. Let me ask you about George W. Bush, because obviously there were people who hated that film, people who felt that it was an unfair portrayal of him, etc. In the context of where we are today in history, I think there's been a reevaluation of him, fair or unfairly, right? There's just been a reevaluation of him, especially in light of where politics have gone. He's kind of seen as a mainstream kind of establishment figure, even sympathetic in some ways. And I wonder how you see him. I mean, does it matter? I mean, obviously you become him. You become that character. You get that West Texas accent. But do you have to like a character to really or like something about things about them to become them?
I don't know. I don't think about that stuff. I don't think about whether I like. I mean, do I like or dislike anybody? I mean, there are things that I like about people, and it's like every good has a little evil and every evil has a little good, and I'm interested in that. Like, where's the thing that I can't see?
I guess do you understand them in ways that you couldn't have? Like even Dan White.
That's the whole point. That the acting is not, I've heard many times, and I would like to get there one day. They're like, the only thing I like about acting is between action and cut. And I go, really? That's the worst part, and be like, when you're in the zone. And it's like, yeah, I've been in the zone. It's hard to get in the zone and not see the camera right there and not be. And I think that happens more now that I become less conscious of it all. And I look forward to those moments, but I think it's the research into that.
It's everything in front that happens
it's everything
beforehand.
And that's
it's like hearing something at a gas station and saying, "Let me listen to your accent." Again.
Whether you're a photojournalist or a journalist or an actor or it's like that. That's why I think all those professions that I looked at and I go, I want to be that, or that's interesting to me because you're constantly changing your view and you're getting to know certain new people, and so there's something really wonderful about researching a behavior that's unfamiliar to you. So when Oliver came to me and one of the early scripts of W was hard hitting. And I was like, but you can see this on CNN right now. Let's turn on CNN and we're basically going to see this script. Isn't it more interesting that this black sheep in his family that was never supposed to amount to anything, that was alcoholic, got sober at 40 and became the president of the United States?
Yeah.
How did that happen? What happened to Jed? How did Jed feel? Jeb, how did he feel about it? What was his upbringing? And it, again, not to do this on purpose, but it's bringing it back to my book. It's like, what is this book to you? And you go, the book is the making of somebody who found creativity as an outlet, and ultimately to get away from his kind of self-destructive learnings of what he grew up within, and that's, so me, this is just exploring me, further exploring me. It's me doing the same thing that I would do for a role in my off time between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. when I'm not raising kids.
Yeah. But there's no question that what you just said, like, of course there are things about that you, especially with your story, would relate to. And many of us would. Like, here's a guy who was a fuck-up, right, his whole life, and then turns it around and becomes president of the United States.
And then what do you do with it? And what do you do with it in these horrible decisions that you don't have any perspective on these horrible decisions. Were they him? Were they Cheney? Were they this? Was he really controlled? Were they this? Is the president alone up there? You know, that's why I heard somebody say about debates, when a president is debating and he or she kind of fumbles through something, you go, yeah, but you can't blame them for that. They're surrounded by a cabinet that are telling them things. So they're not supposed to know everything and be right there with every answer, the right answer, right at the time that you ask it. You know, there's an expectation. And I thought, well, I wonder what that kind of pressure was like on somebody who had fumbled and fumbled and fumbled like myself. I'm sure that's what Oliver saw. He said, there's something about Josh that reminds me of this guy, and I'm not going to take that so cosmetically. I'm like, what do you mean? I remind you of W. How dare you? You know, it's like, what's behind the guy? Oh, I get it. He had a dad who was doing well, and then the son gets into it, but the son was more reactive. The son wasn't as smart, maybe. The son, you know, didn't focus as well. And then how did those people, it goes back to like Einstein. You go, what do you mean Einstein failed mathematics? You know, what do you mean Einstein was really guilty about the atom bomb? And then you hear some of those quotes and you go, that's interesting to me. Not how we won all the time. You know, Sicarios are really fun, but if you miss the humanity in Sicario, you've missed the whole thing.
It's the complexity, right? That's what's interesting about these characters. It's that they're not. You can't evaluate them as an either or, whether it's Dan White or whether you're playing a Marvel Comics character or Georgia. Yeah,
Dan White was the great white hope, you know. And then he was put into a much bigger pond. And he was the big fish in a small pond. Then he got in a big pond. And there were smarter people. And they were more resilient people. And when you have a gay person who's dealt with, you know, obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, and then you have obstacles in your life, if you're used to it, you're going to be more resilient. You're going to know how to ebb and flow. You're going to know how to bob and weave appropriately. And then if you have good intention behind it, you actually may get things done if you care about people, as opposed to just always focused on yourself of that guy's making me look bad. That actor has gotten that role. Why not me? I should be doing that role. I should be getting that Academy Award. Fucking loosen up, man. You know, you're not getting the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is, are we all in it together or are we not? Or is it just about me, 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 me? And that's, again, I go back to that, and it's an interesting trajectory to follow from different personalities. It's definitely more dramatic. They go, why do you play such bad guy roles or whatever? Because they're more interesting. Because they've created films and membranes of an idea of themselves, and then if you actually start cutting those down, or those facades aren't working anymore, what happens? You know, when you take the lobster shell off the lobster, what is it? Is it freaking out because it feels so naked and exposed nerves and all that? All that. I mean, it sounds like a big jerk off, but it's really the truth. It's like, what are we made of? And I think that's, again, going back to this book and getting in your 50s, is you go, that's what's happening more and more right now. You know, should I go do a play again? Should I write a book? Should I do this? All these things that interest me, but how can I challenge myself further? Because my ultimate goal is to be on my deathbed and go, and just laugh. That was fun. That was fun, and people could rely on me, and I didn't shit on everybody, just in celebration of myself.